Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Insights with Experts. Joining us here today, we are very fortunate to have Mr. Chris Anthony, the president of Teachers on Wheels, an Australian-grown NGO which helps students get into the field of STEM and provides opportunities for students from a wide variety of backgrounds as well. Mr. Anthony, it's absolutely wonderful to have you here today. How are you?
Good, thank you, Shyam. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So, Mr. Anthony, the first question that we wanted to get into is essentially, so this organization that you've started, Teachers on Wheels, I think it's absolutely amazing. I think what it stands for as well, it's something that's really needed in this current age. I wanted to know, what was your motivation to actually start this? I mean, was this an organization that you had in your mind for some time? Or was there perhaps a single moment that made you think, okay, I want to start this? How did that road actually look like, I guess?
Yeah, so 20 years ago, thanks for asking this question, Sham. So 20 years ago, when I started into my professional career, I always had this passion to do some voluntary work. You know, I was engaged with TAFE students, with university students, helping out teachers. And, I always saw there was a need for students, always there was a need, international students coming to Australia. And a lot of students, there was a need, how much of effort the lecturers and the school teachers put, but you need to have that extra bit of support from the outside. And I was always playing that role from the outside, trying to help students out. I would bring students into the corporate world and show them a real effects scenario of how it might be if you work here, right from the school days, bringing grade 9, 10, HSC students into a corporate world and showing them the lab and cool things we do that really was interesting for them. And because I came through this, to the same system, but there was no one to guide me, right? So I thought, look, let me be a guide and mentor for young people. And over a period of time, I decided to start my own charity because that's where my heart was. After 20 years of a professional career, I've traveled the world, and I was very fortunate working for top tech companies in the world. But I want to give back to the community, and that's why I started this Teachers on Wheels 3 years ago.
Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah, that sounds really interesting. I would just like to then ask now. So, I mean, you started this thing back maybe some years ago. I mean, if we currently look where we are now, I mean, students, where we kind of find ourselves in a very unique situation that I don't think many students have found themselves in, and that's one that's been where many students are leaving school, many students are looking for jobs in the heart of COVID-19. So I wanted to ask you, what are perhaps some of the skills, perhaps some of the characteristics that you think students should be trying to learn, trying to develop over these next few months to actually attract employers in this current age?
So, so that's an interesting question, right? So people in Australia, you'll know that the last 25 years, we had a good run. We never had recession. The unemployment rate was low. The home loan interest was pretty low as well. When I came to Australia 30 years ago, the unemployment rate was like 13%, and the home loan interest was like 17%. There was no social media, there's no internet. You got to go and queue in front of the Centrelink office to grab the job advertisement from a board, then go to a job interview. Now everything is at your fingertip, and people are able to find jobs wherever, from my iPhones and tablet, what have you, right? But one thing that's missing in young people today is they don't have a plan B in their life. They go for the core skills and they have a core skills, but they don't have a plan B. In case of a COVID-19, in case of a pandemic, what do? You have that one skill and that industry is now gone bust. I mean, what do? You have to turn left and right to make a way out of the situation, right? And that's why I always had a secondary skill, always in my career, right? If one falls through the crack, I have another option, right? I always encourage young people to have that kind of mentality where you can be employable no matter what. You are young, you can really reskill yourself and move to the left or right to learn things. And that should be an attitude. Even at COVID, like, and I know a lot of my mentees are finding 2 or 3 interviews, even in COVID. So that's a great thing.
Of course. So, Chris, I would just like to move on to the next question that we would like to ask. And essentially, what that revolves, I mean, there's this, I mean, it's safe to say that there is an acknowledgement that STEM jobs will be the main jobs in the future, that it is the industry that we should be shifting over to. However, what would you say to maybe students who genuinely don't find an interest in STEM, who are perhaps art students, who are perhaps finance, law students, XYZ? I mean, how do you think they can perhaps find this new role where we're going to have all these jobs which will be involving STEM?
Yeah. See, one of the feedback, some of the feedback I'm getting from young people when I'm mentoring them, especially women, girls in IT and girls in STEM, they say, "Look, I have a STEM phobia. The minute I hear the word STEM, it's scary. They think I have to be geeky, I have to program, I have to know a lot of complex things." But that's not the case. If you go to poorer countries like India and other places, women participation in STEM is quite high, right? And in the Western world, in Australia, STEM is overblown, out of proportion. That really scares people. It's a phobia. First of all, we have to get out of this STEM phobia, right? I can tell you from now, like till to the next 15 years from now, 70% of today's job is going to be made extinct, including arts and finance. The underlying feature of all things is going to be technology. So if you're not going to embrace technology, then you're going to be missing out on a lot of things. So STEM is going to be here, but we are trying to blow STEM out of proportion. But STEM should be to the core of what you do every day. If you're going to be a finance person, you got to understand that's going to be sitting under um, a technology backbone, right? um, Arts, you take any qualification, any career, the backbone of all this career and qualification is going to be STEM, automation, and technology driven. So it's about time that we embrace STEM for what it is.
Yeah, wow. And I think that segues in quite nicely onto this next question, which I'd like to ask, which essentially entails, so you talked about the fact that STEM really will be at the backbone of all of these industries. Now, many students, however, are taking arts. Many students are taking law, XYZ. I myself am taking economics and international relations. How do you think students like us can perhaps involve ourselves in STEM outside of university life as well? Like, are there other ways that we can gain skills in STEM outside of university?
Yeah, so STEM is not something that you have to wait at until you go to university and you become something of a STEM professional, right? STEM should start at your home, at your school. You start fixing small things. You make little gadgets. You code something. You take take up that Udemy course, or the online courses that you have. LinkedIn has a lot of courses, lynda.com. There's a lot of micro courses you can do to learn STEM. You don't have to do STEM as a core subject. You can learn on the side. You can be a finance person. You can be an economist, but still this that X factor that you bring in to the role, it enhances the conversation at workplace. You understand a lot of things. For example, you understand what what are the components of a car, because you use the car every day. I mean, what's uh, the worst thing is not to know the things that you're using, right? So at least at a base level, you need to understand, right? So I'm of a firm belief that people should not wait to learn STEM at the end of their learning, the universities or whatever. You've got to start earlier. Start at school, start at home, and I think some of them are doing already. So that's fantastic to see young people getting onto STEM, um, because that's going to be the future.
Yeah, and I think you would agree that even now in this current age, that's extra accessible. I mean, information knowledge has been democratized in such a way where really any student can hop online, take a course on Coursera, look on YouTube, read a book. There are so many options for us to get information outside of that classic university life. Now, on a more separate note, I would like to shift this next question over to perhaps your experience in the corporate world as being a mentor. Now, if you could think maybe back to what was some of the most vital, most important skills and qualities, most outstanding skills that you found from the mentors that you were under, what would you say they were?
Um, I have trained a lot of young people. I've gone to universities, I've gone to TAFE, and in fact, I literally hired hundreds of them from university and TAFE. Um, some of the qualities I like, and some of the characters I like in those people were they were curious to learn. You know, they asked a lot of questions. People who asked a lot of questions, are curious, they have really come up, you know, like a shining star in the career, right? Normally, what I do is I don't give them the complete solution. I want them to go and find 75% of what I'm expecting. I'll give them some clues. I'll give them some 25% of some questions and some guidance. But it's amazing to see these young people can go research and go find stuff that really it overwhelms. Like, you know, I'm saying, man, I didn't expect so much of information. Now you're coming with all this great stuff. I think these are the guys and girls who really succeed and do well in their career. Um, and also the other point I want to make is young people should not be afraid of making mistakes. You know, if you don't make mistakes, you'll never learn, right? Most companies, I'm very fortunate to have worked in companies where they allowed me to make mistakes earlier on so that I could learn from that mistakes and I can develop my skills based on, you know, those mistakes. So don't assume that companies are going to have a one strike rule, right? If you make mistakes, you're out. That's not the policy, right? And lastly, I would say young people who have really succeeded, in my view, are the ones who can take the critical feedback in a positive manner and apply patch, you know, like in the software world, we say we apply patch and move on and um, build a better product, right? So they need to be learning and from the critical feedback. And I've seen hundreds of them literally progressing to better careers.
Yeah, I find that one point that you made really, really interesting. Like you said, you only give them 25% and then you let them find it out. There's actually a really nice quote, which I like from Phil Knight, where he says that he doesn't tell people what the answer is. He said that he'll infer what the answer is and he wants them
Mm,
to surprise them as a whole
mm,
instead. And I mean,
that's
wow,
right.
yeah, I just find that really, really interesting. So, Chris, moving on to the next section of our interview. So, at this point, we would usually invite a guest student to come on and ask you some questions. But unfortunately, the guest student, Parth Jagtap, is unable to be here for us. However, we have some of his questions. So, Parth is a student that's very interested in the field of IT, and he wants to learn a little bit about your experience in the IT field as well. So, one of the first questions that he wanted to ask you is, do you have any tips on passing an interview for these huge macro firms such as Cisco, the one that you were at?
Yeah. So first of all, to get an interview from the hiring manager or for the recruiter, you have to beat the application tracking system. You know, you could be one of the 200 people applying for the role. If you don't customize your resume, if you don't customize your covering letter to that role, you're not going to get into the door. That's the first step. You got to customize and see what the job advertisement or job description requires and answer to that. You know, you got to spend at least an hour on each job resume. So you get into the door. The second thing is you need to understand what the company does and and go into the website, research about the company, research about the interviewer, research about the hiring manager, go to LinkedIn, follow them, follow the company, right? Follow the executives, read the blogs. You have all, like you mentioned, you have all the tools in front of you in today's world. You can utilize them, right? Build some connections. Then when you go to the interview, think about this acronym SAR. Examples: situation, what action you took, and what result you delivered in that situation. Have one or two or three examples, practice them well, nail them at the interview. This is the problem I had. That's the action I took, and these are the results achieved in those engagement. I think if you pitch in this format, if I was on the other side, like a hiring manager sitting on the other side, I'll be zapped. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And I think in terms of his questions, I think his next question leads in quite nicely from that. So let's assume that, he's made it into that interview, he's passed that interview, he's currently in that firm. And so he's asking perhaps from your perspective of someone who's had experience in these large kinds of firms, what are perhaps some of the big lessons that you learned in your time at these firms?
See, the first 1 or 2 years is very important in a career. You're an early in career person, and you need a buddy. You need somebody who can sit with you and show you the ropes. You need that person, right? That trusted advisor for you. And once you learn the company, what you want, your role, be good at your core skills. Be very good at your core skills. That's the 2 years you have to learn and excel. Now start finding who your top performers are in your team, in the organization, and ask them, look, can I sit with you for a day, half a day, and learn something about what you do? Be curious, connect with those top performers, high achievers. What takes them, what comes makes them to come to work every day. And you have good energy in the company you can utilize and learn a lot from them. And that's what I've done in my career as well.
Of course. So in terms of the last question that he would like to ask, so I'm not actually 100% sure what he's referring to, but the question is, what has been perhaps a noticeable difference between Cisco and TOW?
Teachers on wheels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cisco is a multi-billion-dollar company. It's doing about 40-50 billion dollars turnover every year. It's a large company, right? So there's 75,000 employees, but 250,000 partners supporting the organization. Um, but what Cisco allows people, Cisco and other companies, you name it, AWS and Google, you name it, right? They all fall in the same bucket where they have a very good platform for young people to come and learn. And you have to be a sponge in this company to suck all the information that you have in terms of learning. There's so much of capabilities they have that you can learn. You can fast track your learning exponentially, working for these companies. That's number one. Teachers on Wheels is a charity. It's a not-for-profit charity where we train young people and we groom you to work into these companies like Cisco and Google and AWS. And we want to start here early in the high school level. Then we want to progress our capability into university. And we are very much involved in education, the Teachers on Wheels as a charity. And we want to impart IT related like cloud and cybersecurity kind of curriculums and courses, which is more specialized in the STEM sector today.
Okay. Cool. So I really hope that Path had all of his had all of his questions answered there. So just to finish off the interview now, we would like to ask you the classic question that we ask literally everyone that we interview. And what this classic question is if you could leave just one piece of advice for the youth, what would that one piece of advice actually be?
I use a formula. I always use this formula when I mentor people. And when I speak at universities and TAFE, this is what I tell. You have this formula, CX CS plus X equals success. Core skills, CS is a core skill. You have to have your core skills. How do you develop your core skills? Look at a job description and you have to perform all the tasks, right? Learn about those tasks. That's a core skill. That's a given. That's why you got the job. But to be in the job, you need to bring in an X factor. What is that X factor you bring that the other team members don't have, right? What are the knowledge? What are the skill? What are the special X factor that you'll bring and enhance the team and the manager? That's what you'll be valued for. Always think about an X factor, because core skills you learn and you'll be like cruising. But if you're doing the core skills for 10 years, chances are when COVID hits, you may not have a job because everybody is doing the core skills, right? X factor is what keeps you at your job.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Insights with Experts. We'd now like to introduce a platform that we think would be useful for all of our viewers. Teachers on Wheels is an Australian charity that helps people from all walks of life achieve their career goals. They provide free career guidance and support services to young people in Australia and all over the world, including weekly career webinars with professionals from a diverse range of industries, a resume review service, and a mentoring program in collaboration with Westpac.
Thanks for listening in. This podcast has been brought to you by Desare, a platform designed to bridge the gap between the youth and professionals. You can read more about us at desare.org, and you can also check out the section titled Insights with Experts, where you can submit your questions that you might have for future experts and industries that you would like to learn more about. And you can also refer in any experts that you might know yourself.